She faked medical records and tried to ruin my life. Then I discovered the shocking betrayal hiding in my fiancée's circle. I didn't even make it past the cake table before I knew something was wrong. It was last Saturday, 12 p.m. My girlfriend Jenna was sitting in the center of our backyard, glowing under the stupid boy or girl banner we ordered off Etsy for $80. Pink and blue balloons everywhere. My brother Thomas was handling the grill, one hand on the tongs, one hand texting someone like he always does. My aunt was already crying even though we hadn't popped the confetti cannons yet. And then Betty walked in. 16 years old. My half-sister. Blonde hair tied so tight her forehead looked angry. Baby pink crop top that said it should have been me. She didn't even look at Jenna, just stared straight at me with the smug little half smile she does when she knows something I don't. She was holding a folder. Not a gift bag. Not a card. A folder. My stomach dropped. Hey, I said cautiously. You were late. Yeah, I had to print stuff, she said. Like that explained anything. Before I could respond, she leaned in close, her perfume way too sweet, like cotton candy rotting in the sun. Just so you know, she whispered, you shouldn't be celebrating. Every muscle in my spine turned to ice. What the hell does that mean? She straightened, fake smiled wide, and loudly said, oh, don't worry, I'll explain after the surprise. Jenna, bless her, tried to smooth it over. Hi Betty, want something to drink? No, Betty replied, eyes still locked on me. I'm good, I already sent everything to the lawyer. Lawyer. That word hit me like a brick. I walked away from the party area, motioning for Thomas to follow. We ducked behind the shed, out of view of everyone. You see that folder? I hissed. Yeah, he said, wiping sweat off his forehead with a paper towel. She's got that look. What did you do? Nothing, that's the problem. She's planning something. He stayed quiet, because we both knew this wasn't new. Ever since our dad died 2 years ago, everything turned into a war. He left behind a family trust. Millions. Real estate, stocks, life insurance, all of it meant to be split between us. Or so I thought. Turns out my stepmother Betty's mom had been siphoning from it for years. And when I found out, I froze access. Filed to contest the will. Suddenly I became the villain. They couldn't beat me legally, so they tried something else. Character assassination. First, they claimed I was financially irresponsible. Then emotionally unstable. Then a danger to children. At that point, I didn't even have kids. Now I did. A baby on the way. And Betty showed up with a folder. I marched back toward her. What's in the folder? I demanded under my breath. She tilted her head like a bird. Oh, just medical records, text logs, screenshots, evidence. My throat tightened. Evidence of what? She smiled wider. That you're unfit to be a father. My hands curled into fists. Betty, don't do this. She shrugged. Already did. Family court opens Monday. Enjoy the pink or blue or whatever. It won't matter. Before I could react, Jenny yelled from across the yard. Everyone gather. Time to pop the can. Everyone cheered. Except me. I stood frozen while Betty walked over to join the group like she hadn't just detonated a bomb in my life. Thomas came up beside me. You want me to kick her out? I swallowed hard. No, if I blow up now, I'll look unstable. That's what they want. So what's the plan? I stared at Betty standing next to Jenna, smiling sweetly like she wasn't plotting to legally erase me from my own child's life. I don't know, I muttered. But then she did something that made my blood run cold. She reached out and touched Jenna's stomach. Like she owned my unborn kid. Like she was already claiming custody. And that was the first moment in my life that I understood what pure animal rage felt like. I didn't hear the confetti pop. Everyone around me screamed and clapped, pink and blue mixed in the air like cotton candy smoke, but all I saw was Betty's hand resting on Jenna's stomach like a brand. I walked over slowly. Not running. Not yelling. Just moving with this eerie calm that didn't feel like me. Jenna turned, grinning. It's A. Don't touch her, I said, eyes locked on Betty. The whole yard went silent. Someone coughed. Betty blinked innocently. Relax, I was just a. Get your hand off my child. She pulled back slowly, then raised both palms in mock surrender. Geez, hormones much? Thomas appeared at my side like backup. He wasn't smiling anymore. Jenna looked confused, scanning between us. What's going on? I opened my mouth to explain, but Betty beat me to it. Charles is just upset because I brought evidence. Jenna tensed. Evidence of what? Betty flipped open the folder right there in front of everyone. There, medical reports, doctor statements, screenshots of texts where Charles admits to ignoring treatment recommendations, neglect, potential fetal endangerment. Jenna's jaw dropped. What the hell are you talking about? I stepped forward. She's making it up. Don't listen to you. She held up a paper and read aloud. Patient refused prescribed prenatal supplementation for partner despite warning of risk to fetus. Jenna turned to me, stunned. What, when? I shook my head. That's not real. But Betty wasn't done. She pulled out printed screenshots of ones I'd never seen. Thick text messages. Ones that looked like I had sent them. She'll be fine without the meds. Stop being dramatic. Doctors just want money. I'm not paying for that crap again. You worry too much. The baby is my responsibility, not yours. Jenna stared at them, her eyes filling with hurt. Charles, tell me you didn't. I didn't, I snapped. Panic flared hot in my chest. That's Photoshop, she faked those. Betty gasped dramatically. You're calling me a liar? I'm calling you a criminal. She clutched her chest like a soap opera actress. Wow, this is exactly why I filed for emergency guardianship. You're unstable. You're screaming at a minor right now. You're trying to take my kid. She shrugged. Only because someone asked to protect it. I lunged. Thomas grabbed me by the shoulders before I could get close. Bro, not here. Betty smirked. Jenna whispered, voice trembling, Charles, please stop. People are watching. I looked around. Everyone, friends, neighbours, relatives were frozen. Phones half raised. Faces unsure whether to intervene or film. Humiliation crawled up my neck like fire ants. Betty leaned close to Jenna and said just loud enough for me to hear. Don't worry, I've already arranged everything. You won't have to deal with him for long. Jenna recoiled. What? And then, like she planned this part too, Betty started crying. Fake, pathetic, high-pitched sobbing. She threatened to call me last night, she whined to the crowd. Said if I didn't stay out of the baby's life she'd cheat it. She covered her mouth like she couldn't say it. Someone gasped. Rage exploded inside me. That never happened. But it didn't matter. Betty had already won the audience. An older woman whispered, poor thing. The guy muttered, why'd he invite her if he hates her? Jenna looked at me, torn between protecting me and protecting our unborn child. And that broke me more than anything. Thomas got between us. All right, show's over, he snapped at Betty. Leave. Betty sniffled. Can't. Legally I'm not allowed near him without a witness now. I froze. What? She smiled through her fake tears. Oh, right. Forgot to mention I already filed a temporary restraining order. You'll get served Monday. You're insane. No, she said sweetly. I'm responsible. Then she turned to Jenna and whispered. You don't have to raise your baby in chaos. My mom already talked to the court. We can take care of everything. Something in Jenna's face broke. She didn't answer. She didn't even look at me. And in that moment, with confetti still on the grass and people awkwardly pretending they weren't listening, I realized I wasn't just fighting rumors. I was already losing custody of a child who wasn't even born yet. I didn't sleep that night. Jenna and I didn't even speak after everyone left. She went straight to the bedroom, shut the door, and I could hear her crying through the wall. I sat on the couch, staring at the half-deflated balloon that was slowly spinning on the floor like it was mocking me. Around 2 a.m, Thomas texted. T, you awake? Me, yup. T, come outside. He was sitting on the hood of his car in the driveway, hoodie on, chewing some fuzz seats like he always does when he's stressed. He tossed me a pack without saying anything. We sat in silence for a minute. Then he sighed. She's going nuclear. I know. Worse than I thought. My throat tightened. What do I do, man? He cracked a C between his teeth. You fight, but smarter, not angry. I nodded, but my hands were still shaking. He glanced toward the house. Jenna's scared. Doesn't mean she believes Betty. Don't make her choose right now. I swallowed. She didn't defend me. She froze. Everyone did. Betty's good at that guilt trap. Oh. Silent again. Then Thomas looked at me, really looked at me, and said something that hit deeper than he knew. You're not Dad. Don't let them make you into him. For context, our dad was loud. Old school. If someone disrespected him, he'd put a hole through a wall before he'd put words together. It made him look strong, but in the end, it let other people control his story. They called him unstable. Dangerous. And now they were trying to do the same to me. I whispered, I need proof, something that kills all this. Thomas smirked. Funny you say that. He pulled out his phone, opened a folder labelled for when Betty bed is. Inside were screenshots. Videos. Voice memos. All of Betty. Bragging. Laughing about forging texts. Joking about playing victim. Even one clip where she literally said, I swear, if Charles ever gets that trust money, I'll just get him arrested, easy. My jaw hung open. You've had this the whole time. Thomas shrugged. It's a hobby. I nearly hugged him. But then my brain clicked into gear. This is it. This flips everything. He nodded. But we need more. Enough to bury the whole operation, her and her mom. And that's when he dropped the bomb. Dude, Betty's not working alone. I frowned. What do you mean? He spit a shell into the grass. I overheard her talking to someone. She mentioned a pay of money being moved. Someone funding her lawyer. Her mom. He shook his head. Bega. Who? He stared at me hesitant. Jenna's best friend. My blood went cold. No, no way. He raised his hands. I'm telling you what I heard. Names, amounts. Betty said, and I quote, if we pull this off, we all get it cut. I stood up so fast the hood of the car screeched under me. You think Jenna knew? Thomas did too. No, but someone close to her does. Someone she trusts. My head was spinning. Images flashed at Jenna's group chat blowing up after we announced the pregnancy. Her friend Megan always asking all these specific legal questions. Her other friend, Kelsey, making comments like, "Better hope you get good custody terms." Before the baby was even born. Jesus Christ. Thomas placed a hand on my shoulder. "Listen, tomorrow morning we go through everything, build a file, lawyer up. We hit them before they hit you." I nodded. My pulse was pounding like war drums. But then something inside me cracked. My voice broke as I whispered, "Do you think my kid will ever understand why I had to fight like this?" Thomas didn't hesitate. "She won't just understand, she'll be proud." My vision blurred, but I didn't cry. Not yet. Because crying felt like surrender. And I wasn't surrendering. No. Not ever. Courtroom 3B smelled like cheap coffee and recycled air. I'd never felt colder in my life, not when Dad died, not when I found out about the estate being embezzled. My hands were clammy, shaking slightly as I gripped the folder Thomas had handed me that morning. This wasn't just evidence. This was survival. Betty walked in first, looking impossibly calm, hair perfectly straight, lips painted like a porcelain doll. Her mum followed, eyes glossy, acting like concerned saints. I counted 5 lawyers on their side to a fortress built to crush me before I could even speak. Then Thomas and I entered. Janice stayed home. She couldn't bear to see it yet. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of 1,000 unfair accusations resting on my chest. They called me unstable, neglectful, irresponsible, all lies, all forged. And now it was my turn to fight. The judge, a woman in her 60s with glasses perched on the tip of her nose, looked up. "We're here for the temporary custody hearing. Mr. Charles, you may present your evidence." My voice was low at first, trembling, but I found strength in Thomas's steady nod from the back row. I opened the folder and began. Screenshots, videos, voice memos, emails, every manipulated text Betty had sent, every whisper, every brag, every plan. And here, I said, sliding a paper across the table, is a video from December 12th. Notice a mess. Betty's own words. She admits to forging text messages and planning to manipulate the court. The courtroom gasped. Betty's jaw dropped. She had not expected this. Her mom's lips pressed into a thin line, eyes darting around frantically. I could almost hear their internal panic, the carefully constructed web unraveling. You can't prove that's authentic." Eddie stammered. Her voice wavered, tiny cracks showing through the bravado she always hid behind. "I can," I replied, holding up my phone. "And it corroborates every claim here." I turned to the judge. "Your Honour, these aren't just allegations. They're documented, intentional acts to defame me and interfere with my parental rights." The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. People leaned in. The weight of truth was suffocating them. I could feel their disbelief, the same shock I felt myself when I realised just how deep Betty and her mother's betrayal went. Then I dropped the final bomb. "You may also want to see the bank statements," I said, sliding another folder forward. Funds from the family trust were being embezzled by these two. The stolen money was partially used to fund this false accusation campaign. Silence. Betty's face went pale. Her mother's lips trembled. One of their lawyers whispered frantically, flipping through papers. I could see the panic in their eyes. They knew they were exposed. The judge leaned back in her chair. "This is highly irregular." I kept going. "And there's more. The person orchestrating much of this behind the scenes is someone extremely close to my fiancée. The betrayal runs deeper than family, is manipulation of everyone around me." Heads turned. Gasps filled the room. Even Betty's smug arrogance faltered. I paused. Heart hammering. I could feel every eye on me. I didn't just bring this evidence to protect myself, I brought it to protect my child. Finally, the courtroom erupted. Not with yelling, not with chaos, but with realization. People started whispering, exchanging shocked glances. The weight of truth hit harder than any lie could. Betty slumped in her seat. Her mom's face was frozen, pale as a ghost. I felt a strange sense of release wash over me, not complete victory, but vindication. My love for my unborn child had been weaponized against me, but now, that same love had turned into the ultimate shield. The judge called for a brief recess. As I stepped out into the hall, Thomas slapped me on the shoulder. "You did it, bro. You actually did it." I nodded, but I couldn't smile. Not yet. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. And deep down, I knew one thing. The person I trusted most, the one I thought was untouchable, was the real architect of this nightmare. The betrayal wasn't just family. It was betrayal wrapped in friendship, disguised in loyalty. The next steps would be brutal. But at least now, I had the truth on my side. After court, everything felt unreal. The air outside smelled like gasoline and damp concrete, and my hands still trembled from adrenaline. Thomas walked beside me, muttering under his breath about filing more motions, contacting the forensic techs, securing every digital trail. I nodded, barely hearing him. My mind was elsewhere on Jenna, on the baby, on the idea that people I trusted could turn their entire lives into a weapon against me. Jenna didn't come to court. She said she needed space, and I couldn't blame her. I drove to our apartment in silence, Thomas following behind. The streets were empty, streetlights flickering like they were mirroring my exhaustion. When I walked in, Jenna was curled on the couch, blanket over her head. She didn't speak. I sat beside her, hand hovering, unsure if she wanted comfort or distance. I started, but words failed me. Instead, I handed her a folder. What's this? She asked softly, peeking out from under the blanket. Everything, I said. Court evidence, proof of what Betty and her mom did. All of it, and it. I swallowed. Also about the person pulling strings behind the scenes of the one you trust the most. Her eyes widened. You mean Megan? I nodded. Yes, she was coordinating with them, feeding them information, advising on legal moves. I didn't want to believe it either. She buried her face in her hands. I feel sick, I can't believe it. I wrapped an arm around her. She shivered, but I held her tight. My body still pulsing with tension, my brain replaying every betrayal, every manipulated text, every false accusation. It was exhausting, heartbreaking, terrifying. But the folder on my lap felt like a lifeline, proof I could finally stand on solid ground. Thomas appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Here, you're going to need this, and maybe a stiff drink later, he muttered. I accepted it with a weak laugh. Coffee never tasted so bitter, but I drank anyway. The warmth spread slowly, easing some of the tension in my chest. The next few days were a blur. Lawyers, court filings, subpoenas, forensic analyses. Phone calls from police about cyber fraud, emails from estate attorneys confirming embezzlement. Each day, I felt a mix of exhaustion and cautious hope. Jenna and I met in secret at the small cafe nowhere near anyone we knew. She held my hand across the table, fingers cold but steady. Charles, thank you, she whispered. You didn't just fight for yourself, you fought for us. I nodded, staring at the cup of coffee I couldn't touch. I had to. They weaponized my love for you and our child. I won't let that happen. She squeezed my hand. It's scary, though, knowing someone so close could betray us like that. I know, I admitted. But now we know, and now we can protect ourselves. Even Thomas, normally stoic and unshakable, had his moments of quiet reflection. We spent hours combing through emails, texts, and video files, ensuring nothing could be twisted against us again. Every discovery was a punch to the gut, every revelation a mix of anger and relief. But slowly the tension eased. Each confirmed piece of evidence gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt since Dad passed. The nightmare was far from over, but at least we had weapons of truth now. At night, I couldn't sleep for long stretches, but I learned to sit with the anxiety instead of letting it consume me. I started journaling every interaction, every phone call, every motion in court. Writing became a way to process the paranoia, the fear, and the anger that still lingered in my chest. And through it all, Jenna stayed by my side. Not out of obligation, but because we both realized how fragile life could be when trust was violated. We weren't just protecting a future child anymore, we were rebuilding our foundation. There were moments, late at night, when I'd catch myself imagining what life would have been like if Betty had succeeded, if the lies had worked. The thought made my stomach turn. But instead of despair, it strengthened my resolve. I could see clearly now, betrayal could hurt, but truth had power. And in that there was a strange, fragile hope. The courtroom battle finally ended 3 months later. By then, I had built an airtight case of videos, screenshots, emails, and testimony from Thomas and a few digital forensics experts. Betty and her mother sat at the plaintiff's table, pale, glancing at each other like frightened actors waiting for a cue. Megan, the hidden betrayer, had been subpoenaed. She sat stiff and silent, eyes darting nervously around the room. When the judge delivered her verdict, I felt a wave of relief so strong it almost knocked me off my chair. Temporary custody was granted fully to me and Jana. Betty and her mother were barred from making any contact with our child until further review. Megan faced contempt charges for lying under oath. The courtroom erupted with whispers, gasps, murmurs, but I didn't smile. I felt numb, exhausted, and yet finally free from the suffocating weight of lies. Afterwards, Thomas pulled me aside. You did it, man. You stood your ground. I couldn't have without you, I said. My hands still shook from adrenaline, but this time it wasn't panic, it was exhaustion and relief intertwined. Walking out of the courthouse, Jenna wrapped her arms around me. Her hair smelled faintly of coffee, her eyes rimmed red, but her smile was real. We okay? She whispered. I nodded, and for the first time in months, I let myself breathe without feeling the shadow of betrayal looming over me. The next weeks were a blur of recovery and rebuilding. We moved some funds into secure accounts, strengthened security around our estate, and changed passwords for everything digital. Every time I glanced at the baby's ultrasound photos, I felt an unfamiliar, profound sense of hope. Life had handed us a nightmare, yes, but we'd survived it stronger and more united than ever. Yet, the trauma lingered. Nights were hardest. Even now, I sometimes woke to the sensation of being watched, my pulse racing at every unexpected text or email notification. I reminded myself this wasn't paranoia anymore, it was vigilance. Protecting my family meant learning the difference between fear and foresight. I also learned who my true allies were. Thomas, unwavering. Jana, resilient. A handful of friends who had quietly supported us without judgment. And, most surprisingly, the people who had initially doubted me, they apologized, and we rebuilt those relationships slowly, cautiously. One evening, sitting on the couch with Jenna and Thomas, I finally let myself smile. The apartment was quiet, soft lamplight reflecting on the walls, the smell of leftover takeout lingering. We didn't need words. We just sat together, a small unit battered but intact. I realized the lessons this nightmare had etched into me. Love is powerful, but vulnerable. It can be weaponized, but it can also protect. Truth is the ultimate defense, even when everyone else believes the lies. Documentation and evidence can save you. Trust cautiously. Betrayal can come from anyone, even the closest friends, but resilience grows from recognition and action. Family isn't just blood, it's loyalty, courage, and standing up when everything is against you. And most importantly, I learned that surviving trauma doesn't mean being unscarred, it means walking forward, step by step, even when every step feels heavy. Now, I'm preparing for the arrival of our baby. The nursery is painted in neutral colours, with no pink or blue, because I want our child to grow up in a space free from the chaos that nearly tore us apart. I feel a cautious optimism, a fragile, beautiful hope that life can still be joyful. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I don't pretend to be unshaken. But I know we made it through the storm, and that gives me more strength than fear ever could. Betty and her mother, they're fading from our lives. Megan, a reminder that betrayal can come from unexpected places, but so can redemption and resilience. And me? I'm still Charles shaken, yes, but grounded. And finally, for the first time in a long time, I feel like a father who can truly protect his family.